Chapter 22. What the Future Holds. Annabeth stood. Okay, so we know that Aliana's the Forgotten Daughter, and that some kind of evil is trying to get her for her power. Probably the same person who has the stone, Percy put in. We assume, Annabeth corrected. For all we know, it could be someone completely different, and the person with the stone took her powers in an attempt to stop the prophecy. Percy nodded. Noted. And filed under worst-case scenarios. Hopefully it's not that complicated. Annabeth started pacing. Anyway, we think greatest heights and deepest depths refers to her going to the entrance of Tartarus and Olympus. The dreams are probably the nightmares she was having on her trip to LA. We're probably going to get injured with the possibility that it could be fatal. She took a deep breath. And there's a threat to the existence of all half-bloods, which we assume is the stone. Percy glanced from the prophecy to Annabeth. Yep, that just about sums it up. She plopped down on the floor. So, the main question is, who's the abandoned son? Kronos laughed as she struggled against the dark restraints. You can't escape. You're helpless. His voice echoed ominously through her mind. They're all going to suffer. And it's your fault. The scene shifted to a raised camp. Campers were crawling out of the camp rubble and helping each other to their feet. Shadows darted among the flaming wreckage. She caught sight of Percy and Annabeth warding off a massive, monstrous form protecting some of the younger campers. Her heart skipped a beat as she recognized the ferocious opponent. The Chimera. The vicious creature growled aggressively, its ears lying flat against its skull. Its serpent tail moved fluidly, threateningly. Percy and Annabeth were already battered and bruised, their clothes singed, dirt and soot smeared across their faces. The Chimera's tail jerked forward, colliding violently with Percy's shield. The fangs punctured the metal. The monster used its tail to fling Percy aside. She tried to move, to scream, anything. She was paralyzed. Her tongue refused to work. All she could do was watch. Annabeth stood bravely before the Chimera, her shield raised, her knife gripped tightly in her bloodied hand. There was no chance. As Annabeth blocked a stream of fire with her shield, the snake tail lurched around and bit her into her chest. She fought desperately, but her dark bonds held her fast. Someone screamed. Percy charged out of the trees, sword raised, running straight at the beast. He slashed its neck, but the Chimera's thick fur prevented any real damage. The monster whirled on Percy. It jerked its tail, pinning him to the nearby tree. Percy cried out as the venom of his fangs impaled his shoulder. The Chimera growled, opened its mouth, and spewed a jet of flames at him. Finally, her tongue loosened. Percy! Aliana jolted awake in a cold sweat, panting so hard it shook her whole body. Her eyes teared up, and heavy sobs threatened to wreck her. She clutched the sheets of the bed in the white-knuckled grip. Mason burst into the room, having heard her scream. He didn't say anything. He just sat on the bed beside her and hugged her. Aliana leaned heavily into the embrace, feeling her tears slip down her cheeks. Any idea who he is? Percy asked. Annabeth sighed annoyedly. If I did, don't you think I would have said something? Percy chose to ignore the harsh comment. I guess there are a lot of half-bloods that have sort of been abandoned. She shook her head. If it's the end of half-bloods, then he's probably not one. Is it possible that it's one of the gods? He was grasping at straws at this point. I don't think so, Annabeth answered thoughtfully. I guess it's possible, though. Either that or immortal, Percy deduced. She groaned. But how could a mortal wield the stone? Or even know about it, for that matter? He ran his fingers through his hair and flopped backwards. I don't know. Why is this so frustrating? Annabeth sighed. I think we should check out the ritual site again. Percy looked at her like she was crazy. Last time we went there, Aliana lost her power. I know, Annabeth assured, but there's got to be some kind of clue there. Fine. He pushed himself onto his elbows. But if we get zapped by the crazy magic stone, I'm blaming you. Whatever. Annabeth stood and walked towards the treehouse door. Aliana lay awake in bed, unable to sleep, afraid of what was waiting for her in her dreams. She'd been battling with visions of Kronos and a horrific future all week. She couldn't bring herself to tell Mason about it, but they were getting worse. She wasn't sleeping, and when her exhaustion overtook her, Kronos always gripped her by the throat and dragged her into what she feared awaited the half-bloods. Her breaths quickened just thinking about it. As if sensing her restlessness, Mason opened the door and sighed. Still can't sleep. She sat up. No. She scoffed as if the very idea of sleep was absurd. He walked in and sat next to her. I'm worried about you. They're getting worse. I know. She shuddered as she remembered the gruesome scenes. He squeezed her hand and stood. Well, try to get some rest. I'll be right outside if you need me. He stood and moved towards the door. Mason, wait! Aliana bit her bottom lip. I'm ready to talk.